Hi, and welcome back, Freedom Warriors, to Essential Talks, where you stay for the conversation and you leave empowered. Happy Family Day to everybody out there. What a great day it is. Today we have Mike from Forza Barbell out in BC. So tell us a little bit about yourself, your gym. You're a gym owner, how long you've been in business, and let us know what that name means, Forza.
Yeah. So based out of East Vancouver, I've had a gym for, the better part of 7 years in this location for about 6 years. And to answer your question about the name, I was raised by my immigrant grandparents, and Forza means strength in Italian. So I figured it would be kind of relevant and an homage to my upbringing.
That's awesome.
Yeah.
So, and in terms of business, how have you been finding it through the pandemic kind of time zone? Like, how were you open, or how did you kind of navigate things?
So yeah, needless to say, it's been difficult. It's been not only is it difficult to run a business in Vancouver in general, and then you sort of add COVID into the mix, and it's like a whole new situation. Beginning like in March 2020, when everything sort of started, it was funny how leading up to that, like everybody here was so naive, like, oh, that COVID thing that could never make its way to Canada. And then here we are like 2 years later and don't even know what's happened to our country, right? The initial lockdown, I think it's safe to say, maybe you guys can agree, like we all were kind of scared, or at least unsure of what was happening. And I guess that was the only time amidst this whole sort of last 2 years that I somewhat believed that something big was occurring. But there was that little part of me that was like, man, this seems really weird how this has been rolled out, and what the provinces are all doing and what all these countries are doing, like all the closures and everything sort of happened. And like it was this coordinated effort. Because my gym is in sort of like a low-key location in Vancouver, I was actually able to stay open. And because I figured, I'm like, even back then I said, why does the government feel, or why does the government think that they have the powers necessary to shut me down? I have bills to pay. They're not going to pay my bills. So I'm going to kind of take matters into my own hands and, operate still. So you could say the fight really did start a couple of years ago when it all sort of went down. But then especially so when the mask mandates and especially the vaccine passports started. And I'm not going to lie, there was a point in my journey too, and this was mainly early 2021 when I found out that I was going to be a father. So this was last January we found out, and I did go through a period of time where I sort of overcorrected and went the other way. So I went and deleted a bunch of videos, but I had videos of me, lifting with a mask on, and I was just overly cautious. I wanted to kind of just able to operate my business because I was so afraid. I had a kid on the way. And then a really, really good friend of mine sort of sat me down and said, hey, dude, like, I know how you feel about this whole thing. Like, what are you doing? Like the mask stuff, I know you don't believe in it. Why are you doing it? And all it really took, because there's a voice in the back of my head saying, man, you don't actually believe what you're doing here. This is all optics, and this is not your personality. This is not the spirit that you've been given from God. Like, you got to go out there and use your God-given conviction and, really represent what you actually believe. So after that point, got rid of the masks, got rid of everything, and realized, I said, if I want a better future for my family and for my daughter and for my dog and for my future kids, the fight begins in my own backyard, in my own house. So I felt at the time it was pertinent that I did my part by keeping my gym open to all, never asking about the passports, never enforcing masks, but also having a place where if somebody did want to come in and wear a mask, that they should feel free to do so, giving that person that option. Because if we preach, tolerance and inclusivity, we got to walk the walk and not just talk the talk either. So when it came to September 2021, I believe, is when the passports were rolled out in British Columbia, I was like, man, enough is enough. There is no way I can get behind this. So at that point, truthfully, like, it was kind of a fork in the road. My daughter was about to be born like a month after. And I said, either I go this way and I pretend and I enforce something that I don't believe in, that I know the free market, when all this stuff goes away, the free market's going to remember who segregated against people, who discriminated against people. Yeah. Or I go this way and risk potentially losing business, potentially getting shut down, being in the wrong kind of spotlight, or it's just going to take off. And, once I did that, I made the initial post, it kind of went crazy, and it went crazier than I even suspected. And since then, it's been record months in business. Absolutely insane. Hard for me to even keep up with all the inquiries and all the client sessions that I'm currently doing. So I know I'm, being a little bit long-winded, but I've been fighting the last couple of years, but especially so when the vaccine passports were rolled in, and ever since then I've repped the rewards. But CTV, Global News, CBC, they're very quick to reach out to me to for a statement, and we all know how that was going to go, right? That's like them forcing the news for you to put your head through. So I was like, I'm going to pass.
Just put your head in this guillotine.
The last couple of years.
Yeah, just put your head in this guillotine. Go ahead.
Totally.
So I want to go back to a comment that you were talking about, is when you were allowing people to come into your gym and feel comfortable. This is the funniest thing that's happening amongst the freedom movement. We've all become anti-something, but the reality of it all is we've all became pro-choice.
Yeah.
And it has to do with nothing to be anti. We're not trying to segregate. We're actually trying to bring people together. And in my tattoo shop, I do the same thing. I don't care if you're vaccinated. I don't care if you're wearing a mask. You don't want to wear a mask. It doesn't bother me. I'm pro-choice. And that's the message. And it's the hardest message to get across to everyone that's kind of on the other side, and they're listening to CBTV and all of these news networks, and we're all anti this or isms or ists.
Yeah, right? Yeah.
And that's not the case. We're actually trying to pull people into our business, give them somewhere to work out, especially with yourself, with the gym, and the benefits from that alone. Every gym owner we've talked to that has been closed for a period of time, or when people find out that they're open, they thank God because of the mental stress that everyone's going under. And when you're working out, it really helps you cope with things. So do you have any stories that kind of stick out for you dealing with people in their mental anguish and things?
Oh, man. So many people, I started out in this business I just wanted to work with people. Like, I just love working with people and making a positive impact on their lives with, this thing that changed my life, the barbell, the gym. I was, super, super overweight. I was obese. I had, substance use issues and anxiety and depression. And I felt like it was sort of my calling to bring that to my community. And so, especially with COVID and all the mental anguish we've all went through, and even myself, full disclosure, in 2020, most of that year, I was drinking a half bottle of whiskey a night. I went down a real negative, dark rabbit hole. I didn't know what was happening. There was a lot of uncertainty, thankfully pulled myself out of that hole. And so, that aside, there's been sort of countless stories of people coming in here and giving me a hug or breaking down into tears because they didn't have that outlet anymore. People that were really, really suffering, whether it's with substance use or just social isolation. I'm trying to think. It literally happened 2 weeks ago. This lady just signed up and she said, Mike, I haven't gotten vaccinated because, I don't feel it necessary to do so. I don't believe in sort of the government dictating whether or not I should put something into my body. The fact that I even have an option to go and train somewhere, the immense gratitude that she showed me. To me, it's happened at least a dozen times. And I tell you, no matter how often it happens, it still feels like the first time. It feels still just as special because people, I think it's not spoken about enough. I think the real pandemic here is the substance use. It's the anxiety, it's the mental health impact that is far, far, far outweighed the negative impacts of COVID, in my opinion, because I've seen it in my gym, I've seen it in myself, and I've seen it with people that I've worked with. So there's so many stories I could pick from. That was one that immediately came to mind, but there's been many, and it just feels so incredibly rewarding and fulfilling to be able to have a place where people can come in and just feel normal. Just when I'm sure, if you guys been to BC, you'll go to the restaurant Corduroy because she's, Rebecca's been sort of the pioneer of the freedom movement here in Vancouver. So going there, seeing servers with no masks on, you're taken as you are, to feel that little bit of normality and also have the space where I can give that to my community too, has just been has been incredible. It's been such a blessing.
Yeah, to touch on what you're saying with the mental health kind of issues and like what you've seen and everything, I've seen the same thing with my business. So I run a body contouring type business, and the intake forms, I have to ask for medical kind of information, and the incredible uptick in the amount of people that are taking anxiety and antidepressant kind of medicines once since like 2020, 2021, like it was like almost every single person. I couldn't believe it. I really, and it took me a while to really see it, but it was just like, it was happening so consistently that I was just like, oh my God, like it was staggering. And the really, the things that they're trying to sweep under the rug, this whole focus on health, but it's not even like, and we all know this, and it's not about health anymore. Like this is a complete power grab, but at the same time, it's like the level of stuff that they've swept underneath the rug is so incredible, and it's going to cause so many longer like ripple effect type issues. I really do hope that it wakes people up. People are already waking up to this at this time, because they're just like, we were told that, and if we did this, this, and this, then we wouldn't have to go back into this. But here we are again. And so I'm just it's really nice that you have people kind of, approaching you like that, because that's just, especially to from a business perspective, having the courage to stand up against what is, the typical approach, like going against the grain, like going against the tide. It's stressful. Like it's incredibly taxing on you mentally as well too. So to have your cup refilled on a regular basis by people expressing to you what it means to them to have a place to go to for solace and for their mental health and everything, I can't imagine. So yeah, that's again, like I'm very proud that you're one of the people that's standing up against this. It's fantastic. That. Yes.
Thank you. I think it's come to a point where, especially now, and I was talking to my friend this morning about it, and vocalizing frustration over people still being silent about it. And at this point, listen, like, I understand how hard it is to run a business and then to also have this opinion and stick your neck out on the line. However, silence is what's gotten us this far. And no longer can we act like the gray men and just kind of slip through the cracks and focus on our day-to-day lives, because we're so focused on the micro that we lose sight of what happens in the macro when there's inaction to this level. So I feel like in a man or woman's life, there comes a point in their life, an undetermined point, where they have to draw a line in the sand and plant a flag somewhere, and then choose what hill they're going to die on. The thing is, this has been so systematically crafted and constructed for so many years that we are now slaves to our desires. We're gluttons. We lust too much. We overeat. We overdrink. We overconsume. Our dopamine receptors are fried. So when they rolled this out, it was perfect, because we were already on our backs, and our bellies were exposed. So when dangle is scared of the stick, like, hey, you can go get your beer in the weekend as long as you get 1, 2, 3, 4, whatever shots. And people are lining up in droves to do it. People are lining up to do it to go to Canucks games. And they're not willing to give up those things, giving up the micro for the macro. And that's exactly why we're in this mess. It's exactly why we're on the verge of an emergency act being invoked in Canada. Like, what has happened? Bank accounts are being frozen. And that's because the majority of people have decided to just not say anything. Canadians are too polite. We're too polite for our own good. And, I don't mean to sound unempathetic to the struggles of a business owner, but when I look at other people whom I know what their opinions are, because they're direct messaging me in the background saying, hey, Mike, I like what you stand for, but, I got to keep my gym open, or I got to keep this open. Like, I got no respect for you. Okay. Because we're at a point where we need to collectively rise up and push against, because if we're just waiting for that guy to fight for us or waiting for that lady to fight for us, we're doomed.
Yes.
We're doomed. I could talk about this for hours. It gets me so fired up. You have no idea.
I know. You have awesome energy. So, I mean, go ahead, Jessica.
I was going to say, I heard this one saying at a protest one time, that silence is compliance, or something like that. Like the silence is compliance. And I can't remember how the rest of it went, but it was just like, it really stuck with me that, the people that are sitting back and kind of, this is how you get the slow encroach of the authoritarian kind of regime that we're now starting to become under. And I love how people were, saying how ridiculous that was. And, even my parents, to be completely honest, when we had talked to them, like my husband's like, from a historical standpoint, we can see where this is going to go because it always has gone this pattern beforehand. So looking at the most recent historical comparison, there's going to be a passport system in place. So this is going to happen. And my parents were like, oh, that's ridiculous. That's not going to happen. And then here we were. And then we were saying, like, here we are. So what do you have to say? They're like, well, they try to brush it off. And it's always that, like, well, it won't go to the next step. Well, it won't go to the next step. Well, it won't go to the next step. And it's just like, and here we are. And so when's your last step? When is your last step? When do you say that enough is enough? And so I to get back to kind of the stances that you've been taking and the kind of the no bullshit position. So onto the Operation Greenlight that was brought around in Vancouver. Did you want to just touch a bit on that and kind of your position on that?
Yeah, I thought I found out about Operation Greenlight through that Iron Energy fiasco, right? And so I think the sentiment of that message was good. I think now, just speaking pertaining to the Iron Energy situation, I think the heart of the message was good. And this is what I said to the guy in my comments and in my DMs when we were talking about it before he blocked me. was the sentiment of the message was good. The energy was really good, but the execution was really poor. And the thing is about social media activism is that it's really, really fucking lazy. You post up a little green box or a little black box, and then like that's pretty much it. Now, I do really admire all the gyms that decided when that was about to go down that they kept their doors open, no mandates, no masks, no passports. I can get behind that. I just thought when I see movements like that on Instagram, to be fair, I think they're a little bit cheesy, because it's like putting, back in the day when you would change your, Facebook profile to like the rainbow flag or to the France flag back, save France. And like, that's the extent of people's activism. They don't actually act with their own businesses or in their own actions.
Yes.
You froze up on us.
We'll wait a moment here to see if we can get him back on. It might just be an internet delay. Oh,
yeah.
Oh, there we go. Perfect.
Yeah, there it is.
So yeah, sorry, continue with what you're saying.
Yeah, I just thought like, are you asking me in regards to the movement as a whole or pertaining to the Iron Energy situation?
Both. I mean, like really, like I know that you're, I know how you felt about the movement, that the need for it was there, but yes, in terms of execution and I find it very fascinating how as soon as the government sees a little bit of pushback, they kind of, one step back, but then it's two step forwards, but then one step back, and that people haven't already caught on to that yet. Like, it's very clear they keep doing this. So why do you give them the leeway when it seems like they just take the pressure off a little bit? It's going to boil back again. Just because it went down by 20% doesn't mean that that's not going to come back again. And so basically, so from where you're talking about how you found out about it and your stance on it, and then kind of where it went from there once it was announced and how gyms got together and everything.
There was a couple of really good examples. For example, West Coast Iron out in, I believe, in Port Coquitlam, IFBB pro Ron Partlow runs that gym. And, I really admired what he did because when that all went down, he said, you know what, fuck it. No mandates, no passports, no masks. I'm done with it. And I was like, man, okay, that's how you put your money where your mouth is. You don't just do it when it affects your bottom line. And that was my biggest gripe with Iron Energy. It's like, okay, well, now you're this big vocal proponent of freedom. Meanwhile, the whole time, there was nowhere on any social media pages or websites that, stated that they weren't enforcing the Vax Pass or the masks, but they only came out and started just like, oh, yeah, we're freedom fighters when it affected their bottom line. And so when I see an incongruent message and when I see what I perceive as just trying to capitalize on people's emotions being high, because it's easy to get caught up in it, right? Like when somebody sends you something on Instagram, you take it at face value. You're like, oh, that's really awesome. But sort of upon further inspection, you're like, well, this is a little disingenuous. Like what the hell is actually going on here? And so when I put his ass to the fire a little bit and I said the whole time, I want my mind to be changed. I'm not trying to pigeonhole you and write you off. Like, I'm not trying to create infighting with the troops. But I can't fight alongside somebody that I don't think is actually going to fight when shit hits the fan. It's like if you're choosing a group of friends, right? I know all of my closest guy friends. If we were walking down an alley one night and then some, threat to our life presented itself, that we would all fight together. Who do I want to align myself with? I don't want to align myself with business owners that pick and choose and cherry pick when they want to fight. You know, I want somebody that's going to be there and we're going to burn the boats together. And so when there wasn't a proper dialogue, and when I put out that message and it was met with mostly just like more sort of like machismo posturing, like motivational posturing, there really wasn't nothing of substance. And then I get blocked. It almost confirms my thoughts. It confirms this sort of intuition and this conviction that I had to say, hey, listen, I got to point out dishonesty when I see it. But I say it to this day, because even though he's blocked me and my friend, I still am open to my mind being changed, because it does take balls to put yourself out there. But I urge people and I prompt people, just be fucking consistent with your messaging. Okay. Because your community sees it and the real ones can see through the bullshit. And that's why I had to call it out. You know what I mean? So.
Yeah. That's awesome. So in February, reminds me of with We Are All Essential. In February 11th, 2021, we decided that we were going to open up across Canada. So we did this whole campaign. In Ontario, Doug Ford wound up saying that we were allowed to open February 16th. So a good chunk of people sat down. And the point I've been trying to make since then, because they were like, oh, what's 5 days? Well, 5 days we're here, right? Mm-hmm. So every time they loosen up the restrictions, don't kid yourself. It's coming heavier. So what's happening right now, and I'm going to point this out to every single person that's listening out there and every business, is you think they're getting rid of these vax passes. They're making it federal. So it's not going to be provincial anymore. It's going to be federal. That's why they're dropping the mandates to put it in to enforce it heavier. So never, ever kid yourself. If you don't start standing up now, when are you going to stand up? When you don't have a business anymore? You know, so I'm right on board with you. We all need to stand up, fight this fight together, lock arms, and take no more shit.
That's exactly it. We can't rest on our laurels. You know, what this reminds me of, what's happening with us is, I watched a documentary. It was a documentary of the most dominant coalition of lions to ever exist in Africa. And this is an interesting point. How lions attack a wounded animal is sort of how the government views us. And this is what I mean. When the animal's wounded, they'll swoop in with the restrictions and mandates, and they'll swoop in, they'll hurt the animal, and then they'll back off and they'll ease off a little bit. Let it sit there, suffer a little bit until it gets tired, and then it jumps in when it starts to fall asleep, when it's vulnerable again. And that's what you see happening in this country and around the world. Just like you said, they'll ease up the restrictions. People let their foot off the gas. You know, the government is they're not in retreat anymore, which just gives them more of a pathway to charge forward and sink their talons in a little bit deeper. You know, Jessica, you were saying it's the totalitarian tiptoe. Right? Yes. We're the frogs in the pot of water, and they're slowly turning it up.
Yes.
And we don't realize it. It's the death by 1,000 cuts. So we can't rest on our laurels. We have to just keep pushing forward, no matter, you know, how tired we are. And honestly, like, this is a little ridiculous to talk about, considering that, like, less than 100 years ago, men were lying about their ages to get enlisted to storm the beaches of Normandy to face certain death. All we're asked and called upon to do is to keep your doors open, right? Mm-hmm. Find a different way. If you can't keep your job, like, I understand I've had so many clients that are like, man, I had to get the shot because I didn't want to lose my job. I have a mortgage, and my heart breaks for these people, because, like, what are you supposed to tell them? You know, I know what I want to tell them, but I also know I have to be compassionate and empathic. Now, not everybody's situations are the same. Yeah. I just wish people had more belief in themselves, that they'd be able to find another job. They'd be able to find another means of making money. You know, listen, I'm a Christian, and I truly believe if you're on the side of righteousness and you're going with God's conviction in your spirit, he will find a way, just like he found a way for me, where I felt like I was prepared when I, made that post in September. And even before that was, okay, they're going to try to shut me down, and I'm going to have money put aside for lawyer fees or for, court fees or whatever. And I'm prepared to do that. And it went the other way. And I'm still prepared to do that. I'm not resting like, oh, they're not going to come after me. They might still do that. But that's a fight that I'm prepared to make. But my faith and my, you know, unwavering belief that I'm on the right side is fuel enough for me. And looking at my daughter's face, of course, is fuel enough for me to keep going. We all need to keep going. And we all have more strength deep down than we even realize.
Yes.
So,
I think that if people were more aware of history and had a better grasp of it and understanding of it, that this wouldn't have even happened in the first place. I mean, like, and I've said this multiple times on podcasts, but when I was in high school, like I'm a pretty educated person. I do like to learn things, and so I found that I wasn't even taught that Japan was part of World War II until like I met my husband, and he was just like I knew about Pearl Harbor, but I had no idea about the whole Pacific Theater, like nothing. And so the fact that I didn't even know about the most recent thing that was like a huge factor in our lives and how we view freedom and the reason why we hold on to it. It speaks volumes to the idea that they don't want people to know about history. They don't want us to know about these things because of the power that it gives to understand when you're seeing bullshit in front of you and that what's completely unacceptable. And so if people really knew how, for example, like the Third Reich had come into power and what the slow roll of it and how it actually happened, it's staggering. Like to anybody, I would recommend, there's an audiobook. You can read the book, but there's an audiobook, I think you watched on YouTube called The Rise and Fall of the Third Reich. My husband had it on the background. I was just cleaning, just doing some things. And I started kind of clipping into it because it was talking about some things and like, there were so many parallels that I was just stopped and listened to it. I'm like, oh my God, like this is exactly what's happening right now. And so when people are saying, oh, you're being ridiculous trying to compare this to, you know, Nazis and stuff, it's like, do you have any idea the parallels? Like, it's terrifying. This is terrifying. And so I think that just really people just are still, this broke them in a way that they don't want to acknowledge the fact of where we're at and where it could be headed because it's scary. And but unless they do, the worse it's going to get. Like the sooner we can stop this. Like, can you imagine if everyone put down their foot like 2 weeks to flatten the curve? I don't fucking think so. And we wouldn't be here. Like we wouldn't be here. No. And so really, like, how much more are you going to trust the people that have constantly lied to you? Like really.
Well, yeah, and you know what's happened. I don't know if you guys watched a couple of podcasts of Dr. Peter McCullough and Dr. Robert Malone on Joe Rogan, and I believe it was Dr. Robert Malone was saying how we're in a mass formation hypnosis. You know, what this has really revealed to me that intelligence and common sense are mutually exclusive a lot of times. I know a lot of incredibly educated and otherwise very intelligent people that when you ask them, do you think the government has our best interest in mind? Their answer is a resounding yes. And it just blows my mind because in any other point in history, like let's say we just go back a couple of years, these same people are like, no, they don't have our best interest in mind at all. It's just amazing what fear does to our brains. And even just looking at some of these people that yell at others when they're not wearing a mask or whatever, just look at their eyes. Their eyes tell a very like powerful and sort of sad story. And nothing breaks my heart more either than like we're putting masks on our kids, man.
Yep.
Speech therapies. Did you see the CDC just updated sort of infant milestones and kids are getting slower?
Yep.
Their development is being halted or stunted. And they did it quietly. Why do you think that is? It's annoying for me when I go to whatever, Starbucks with no mask on, I should say. But I'm talking to somebody with a mask on, let's say, right? I can't understand what the hell they're saying. And I'm 30 years old, okay?
Yeah.
Now imagine a kid where those prime developmental years and how they're able to speak articulately and read nonverbal communication. I feel sorry for this next generation that are being raised by weak fucking parents. Okay. And I look at my daughter and I can't imagine covering her beautiful face with a mask. And as soon as they started coming after the kids, I thought the tide would change. And it hasn't. That we're lining them up to get inoculated too against a virus that overwhelmingly does not impact them. Okay. I had COVID. My wife had COVID. my newborn had COVID. Okay. My newborn got over it in 3 days. Okay. My wife got over it in a week. I got over it in a week or less than a week. I've had it twice, December 2019, before it was become a thing. I'm a COVID hipster, you guys. I don't know if you guys know. I had the original variant. That's what I assume.
Had it before it was cool.
Yeah, exactly. Man, you make a post about that.
Yeah, I had I was on a walk with my husband, and we were walking past a father and his son. They were about to get into their car, something like that. Or they're just getting out of the car. Father unmasked, son's got a mask on, and I'm just like, I basically snapped. I couldn't even help myself anymore. I have a really hard time with that when it comes to children, and so I'm walking past, and I'm just like, how is it that you like that an adult can wear a mask, but they're gonna make their child wear one? Like, it just makes absolutely no sense. My husband was basically like laughing, being like, you're the adult's more at risk. Like, you're like, why are you putting this on your child? Like, that's so basically at the point of calling it child abuse. We're at child abuse. And like what you're saying with the whole fear in the eyes, I've been to the Bulk Barn, I've been to Dollarama, I've been to Walmart, Sobeys, all without masks. I don't play that shit anymore. And then I was at Walmart, and this girl had rolled her eyes at me when I was asking a store clerk for some help with something. And then I was in the checkout, and she comes up to me and she's like, "Can I ask you why you weren't wearing a mask?" And I was just like, "Because it's ridiculous." And she's just like, "So you're endangering everyone around you?" And I was just like, "Yeah, but that's ridiculous. Like, all of my friends had their jabs and they all got COVID. The mask is not going to save you." So she actually waited for me outside and then tried to cuss me out. And it was crazy. Like, she was talking like a crazy person and was demanding to know where I got my information from. And I was telling her, like, the CDC has come out saying that cloth masks don't do anything. And that's what you're wearing. You're basically wearing underwear on your face. Underwear has 2 layers of cotton on it. You were wearing 2 layers of cotton on your face and trying to tell me that's going to save you from a virus. You're crazy. Some guy was recording it behind us. Like, it was nuts. I like turned around. I was just like, dude, this bitch is crazy. And so it was an interesting experience. But yeah, the fear in her eyes, like the look is just like this, like, you're drained. I'm just like, you're nuts. Like, you're fucking nuts.
It's like, look at Justin Trudeau. He's that same kind of deranged. Just look at his eyes when he talks. It kind of tells you everything you need to know.
What was great was seeing the way that he had that smug look in his eye, like, I got this in the bag. And then like when the trucker thing happened, he was just like, this is completely unacceptable. And the look in his eyes, I was just like,
totally.
That didn't go according to plan, did it, Justin? So yeah.
Part of me thinks that the convoy is the result of, these provinces opening up. And part of me also thinks that they knew this convoy thing was going to happen.
Yeah.
I'm sort of still kind of undecided about this whole idea of like controlled opposition, because I don't know if you guys remember a couple of years ago, there was that leaked Liberal document that sort of laid out the rollout of the plan by quarter by quarter. And so we're at this point where supply chains are disrupted. And the step after that is martial law. And we're seeing that happen, the Emergency Act, right?
Yep.
This plan, I think, was systematically crafted over such a long period of time that they projected that these things were going to happen.
Yeah.
Now, I'm still have hope that the country's going to turn around. What's happening is absolutely unheard of and unfounded in Canadian history. But there's still a part of me that thinks if this Emergency Act does go through, and I was talking to a really good friend of mine about this as well, and I think it's similar in the US. All the veterans that we know that have seen the tragedy of war and bloodshed are all waiting and are all sitting by at the sidelines for when things really do pop off. Because the difference between us and Australia and New Zealand is we have guns. Okay, we have guns. And I'm not saying like that's the solution. Do not misconstrue my words. I'm not saying that is the solution to this. But those veterans that have seen it have not acted yet. Because some people are like, oh, why haven't they gotten a bullet in the head? I'm like, well, that's not the solution yet. That is like literally the last resort when the military is like knocking on your door, wanting to forcefully jab you. And then we're like, okay, well, now we have to do something.
Yeah. Our military will not do that though. They're completely on our side. I've been studying all of this nonsense for many, many years, for 25 plus years. I've gotten into spirituality, religions, New World Order. I knew it was going to be a virus. I knew it was out of China. I knew what they were up to. This plan is a 100-year-old plan, and they do it every 100 years. So as soon as they finish the last one, they start it all over again.
Yeah.
So it's very systematic. They've calculated for everything to happen. The one thing they hope never happens is that we actually unify and work as one unit, because we outnumber them considerably. The UK was the mandate. They were the first ones to introduce the full mandates and the vaccine rollout. New Zealand and Australia was stripping people of their rights to see how far they could get. Canada is going to be the martial law. So this is the introduction of the one world government, is to put in martial law. Also, what they're trying to do is get it so that the people are aware that their governments are incompetent. Because if we throw the government out, then they can usher in one world government.
Yeah.
So two things are happening right now, and that is they're lining up the martial law and lining up for us to throw Trudeau out, which they want in order to do this. But like you said, what they didn't anticipate, and I believe this, really deep down, is they didn't anticipate so many people were going to stand up over this one.
Yeah.
And then it went global. Like I just watched a video, Spain, there's a whole street, like super long street full of cab drivers, all honking in support of the Canadian truckers. So this is a worldwide phenomenon now. They can't stop it.
Yes.
And even though they got rid of the truckers in Ottawa, they're now in Quebec City.
Yeah, you push down on one thing, it's gonna spread. Like, you're an idiot. Like,
and people are still walking into Ottawa. There's still people on foot going into Ottawa.
Oh, totally.
There's convoys in BC. Apparently there's a convoy again going to Ottawa from Vancouver to so this is
It's not. I heard about one in Winnipeg or something, that there's this was not going to be over. This is the beginning. This is the beginning. But what you were saying too about the aspect of weapons and things like that, what people need to understand is that, again, from a historical standpoint, you look at Nuremberg trials, where it was a trial where people were put on, the evidence was presented, they were found guilty, and they were hung publicly, versus the French Revolution. So completely unfair. They were there. The aristocracy was taking full advantage of the citizens, and they went on it. And then the citizens went on a head chopping spree. They didn't stop with the aristocracy; they kept going, and it was tumultuous for years. And so that's the thing, is that this. It cannot be the quote bullet in the head type thing. It can't be that way. It has to be trials. There has to be, they put on trial, the evidence is presented, they are found guilty and hung publicly. It has to be that way, because if it's not, that is part, I would say, again, speaking to what Jamie was saying, part of the plan of how to bring this into being, because this is a Hegelian dialect. They have plans for all outcomes, for all possibilities to reach to a specific outcome. And so we just have to try for the part that they want us to do the least, and because that's the most likely to fail. So they've planned for everything. I mean, they have data on everybody. They know human behavior to a T, but that still doesn't mean that they can't be stopped. I mean, how many people, for example, how many people are in the CCP? Controlling 1.5 billion people.
Yeah.
When you really look at it like that, it does break it down. And their most terrifying thing is the idea that the people are going to join together. So you see all these crackdowns in China right now, and there's zero tolerance this. And it's just, I feel like it's an excuse for them to be authoritative, because they're having some serious freaking infighting happening right now. And so for anyone who's afraid of China, sure, I guess the optics, but they are not having a good time.
No, they're not.
Serious opposition going on in their own party right now. And so this is all about the optics, and that's what people, I think, are starting to wake up to, but haven't totally yet. That the idea of the penalties, the idea of this, Trudeau was already putting in the War Act, or this Emergencies Act, before it was even debated, and then had to reschedule the debate in order to execute this on people. It's So what you're doing isn't legal, but you're still going to keep pressing forward with it, even though this is not correct. And so this is where they have doubled down. As soon as they said that the vax was going to be made mandatory on anything, that was their doubling down. That was when they doubled down, because that is a direct violation of conventions that we've had established. Like and the penalty is death. And so when they doubled down, that was them saying, we're going to see this through. You better be ready to fight. And so So it's going to get worse before it gets better, and people have to really be pushed to see how far this is going to go. But exactly what you said, like, we are in a better position than Australia is. They have a good amount of fight down there, which is fantastic.
Totally.
But we have more capabilities in our hands.
And like I said,
yes.
Yeah, no, go ahead. Sorry.
Sorry, you continue.
No, that's why I said I'm not a proponent of violence. I just want to make it abundantly clear that I'm not trying to portray or convey that message. I love the fact that the convoy has kept it peaceful, has kept it Canadian the whole time. And that was the overarching message. The person that is running the Freedom Convoy page, repeatedly we post, hey, listen, do this, keep it peaceful. Like, the posts were all the time, like, keep it into people's faces. Hey, we're not trying to agitate anything here. There's going to be a couple of bad actors. The person waving the Nazi flag, that was Trudeau's photographer, happened to snap a shot. Like, there's going to be that, right? Yeah. But the fact that we haven't resorted to violence is I think, inherently a Canadian trait. And I hope it never gets there, because, you were talking about martial law. I think they want that to happen. They do want this revolt with weapons, so they can come in with more weapons and say, hey, listen, you fucked this up for everybody. Now we have to bring the country under totalitarian control. So it would behoove us more than anything else to keep it freaking peaceful. Show the world what happens when people unify. What country was it? Oh, I can't remember what it was, but they were under a communist regime, and all they did for like miles in a row, they all held hands. I can't remember what country it was, and it led to communism being disbanded in this particular country. I hope somebody fact checks me on that, but I'm almost 100%
I know what
sure
you're talking about. Yes, I can't remember exactly which country. It was it was some kind of European country, but I can't remember.
Lithuania, I can't remember, but it was one of those countries where people just like held arms and linked up, like that true unification. And
like, even in Ottawa, like, bouncy castles, feeding the homeless, cleaning the streets, cleaning the war memorials. Like, I mean, like, they had to work hard for the mainstream media to find anything negative. And even then, like, what they're pushing right now, like, everyone knows, like, this was not a justification, but they already had it in their plans that, like, okay, so we push people hard enough, we let back, we push again, they're going to do something to kind of group together, and that's when we'll put in this martial law thing, because they'll probably, they'll try to stay peaceful, but if they have enough, people in the crowds that are like, oh, you can't be doing this, and they try to start fights, or they start fights with police officers, but they had to, like, the officers were being violent, like, and breaking things and pushing people down and trampling them. And it's just like, you had to go to that extent to try to get the force back that you're trying for, and you still didn't get it. You still look like freaking crazy people. And so the thing is, like, everyone bemoans the US, or a lot of people do at least, about their gun rights, but why do they have those in the first place? Like, why was it written into their constitution? Because the people who wrote that, they knew what will happen if government keeps getting more and more power. Like, it has to have some sort of a leveling out, and if it doesn't, it's going to go nuts. And so here we are. And, like, look at poor Australia. Like, they're going to have to get some, I don't even know, learn how to make, like,
their whole legislature needs to be, like, rewritten, just like ours. Because if a state of emergency can come in and override everybody's rights and freedoms, then it's not worth anything, because the U.S. actually cares about that Constitution, their First and Second Amendment rights, and the rights to bear arms. Because I can't remember who it was, one of the founding fathers, that said once in a while, the tree of liberty needs to be cleansed by the blood of patriots and tyrants. And so they already knew, they anticipated an overreaching, totalitarian, tyrannical regime. And so giving people the ability to defend themselves as sovereign citizens has been, I think, the single most powerful piece in upholding the American Constitution, because there's places like Texas and Florida and a plethora of other states that are opening up that on a federal level they can't really do much about, because they all govern themselves. We're over here in Canada, because of that socialist sort of, like, those socialist sort of ideals that are sort of entrenched in our government and legislature, leads me to believe that there wasn't really much thought put into it, being such a young country. But even with that said, a couple of years ago, or even up until recent times, I've never really been a proud Canadian. But just to turn a positive note on this, seeing this convoy and seeing people with the flags on their vehicles, and I was at the mall with my wife yesterday. We never wear masks, and seeing people come up and, fist bump you and actually shake your hand makes me so proud to be Canadian and to be in this country that who would have known, Canada always, people in the States looked at us as like the kind of the stupid little brother. We would be the pioneers of a freedom movement.
Exactly.
Oh, incredible that is. I get chills just saying it out
every time I
loud.
think about it. I love it. Oh, yes.
But the thing is, though, I hope people don't start to rest on the fact that we're winning. We're not winning. Yeah. We're not winning yet. We've got them in a bit of a scramble where maybe they're on their back foot, but we've got to keep going. And this is why circling back to the unity thing and my stance with the gym is, we can't just expect these big grandiose gestures to change it either. We got to start by, and this is like I'm stealing something from Jordan Peterson, by taking care of our own bedroom, make our beds in the morning. You know what I mean? Yes. We got to focus on doing what we can in our everyday lives, with our businesses, with our families, with our friendships, with our relationships, with not wearing masks, with not going to establishments that enforce the passport. That's us doing our part day to day that helps us fight from a micro level onto a macro level. And I'm sure you guys agree with that. Jamie, with your tattoo business, you said you had a tattoo parlor. Yeah. And then Jessica, you said, do you work remotely, or do you have like a storefront for your business?
So I have an actual location. So yes.
Yeah. So I'm sure you're doing the same thing. So that's how we fight against this too, right? Because beyond that, we can't expect truckers to make the fight for us. This is why it's so great that we repost stuff. It's so great that we show support, that we donate, but it doesn't end there. It doesn't end with a little green box in our Instagram or Facebook icons. It begins and it ends with our day-to-day fight, the world that we want to see, in the day-to-day life we want to see for our families. That's my inspiration, because even in my most tired moments, I look over at my wife and I look over at my daughter, and I'm like, yeah, that's what I fight for. Yeah. And that's it. And my tank is all of a sudden full again.
Well, and that's someone was, I guess, asking in the chat about the 2 UN planes that there was a video of. I've seen the video. My husband was we were talking about it the other day too. But I mean, at the end of the day, this is what it comes down to is you fight for what you believe in. And so if people are going to be coming here trying to disturb us in our homes, in our peace, in our country, what do they fight for? What values do they uphold? After a certain point, they can be like, fuck this, I'm out. And like, I have family at home. I don't want to, this is not a fight worth fighting for, versus when you're there and it's for everything. And so, so I'm not concerned about that. 2 UN planes, like, really, at the end of the day, there's going to be things like that. There's going to be lots of things like that. I'm personally waiting for it to be more clear that that it's China, or some sort of like a authoritative rule that's trying to take over Canada, and then the US tries to come and annex us. So I'm waiting for it. And
no kidding.
I really there's so many more steps to this for it to keep going. And I think that the best first step is that enough people have said, enough is enough. I'm done with this. I don't want to do this. I'm not going to take any more of your boosters. I don't want to have these masks on anymore. I want to be able to see my friends. I want to be able to go places. I don't have to think about this anymore. So already having that mass agreeance on that level is only just going to take it further. Because what are they going to do to push us back? I mean, like, the only thing I can think of is if, like, a crazy, super deadly virus was released. And I mean, like, that's the only thing I can think of that would maybe freak people back into submission.
Well, what are they talking about now? What do you see them talking about now? HIV. Like, why are you talking about HIV? Oh, yeah, because in the clinical trials, in the Australian clinical trials of the mRNA vaccine, a lot of these people tested positive for HIV. And mind you, it was momentary. But what's happening, like, this is a way above my pay grade. I'm not a doctor. I'm a meathead. I own a gym in Vancouver. But what's to say, what happens to your DNA, even if it, like, thinks it has HIV for, like, a blip for, like, a second? Why are we talking? Why is that normal?
Well, it's your immune system at the end of the day. Like, if you're that compromised that things are coming up positive that have no business being positive, like, so if there's micro amounts of things in the air and your system's like, you know, just battling it, and all of a sudden it doesn't have the gas to battle it anymore, what are you gonna be susceptible to? There's lots of stuff that flows through the air. Like, the amount of potential like staph infections or MERS or all sorts of random things that you just get from like flesh-eating disease or something random. I remember there was like a story about like a football player who fell in the soil and got flesh-eating disease, and it's just you know, your body would normally fight that off, but like if we're immunocompromising more and more people, like they're just saying in the US that they recommend immunocompromised people to get the 4th shot, and it's like basically what they calculated at because of how often they need to get it, that they'll be getting 4 shots a year. It's like, if this is going to continue to make you immunocompromised, everyone's going to eventually become immunocompromised. And like, how many side effects? Like, apparently I think this Moderna or Pfizer has the patents to heart medication, help regulating your heart, because in case you get that myocarditis that it's going to freaking give you eventually. Like, it's just
their version of ivermectin, right?
Oh yeah,
because ivermectin is generic and it's cheap and it can be used. I mean, look at the whole Joe Rogan fiasco. I mean, if anybody has any questions of where this is coming from, look into the World Economic Forum, looking into Klaus Schwab and their plans for the Great Reset and Agenda 2030. I mean, listen, like less than a week ago, wasn't the I guess the head speaker or the judge at the House of Commons was asked about Klaus Schwab, and then he pretended like he didn't hear it. It's fucking as clear as day. This is where it's coming from. Jagmeet is part of the World Economic Forum. You know, Maxime Bernier was part of the Economic Forum. I can't speak to him now, but this is why I don't believe in any of these parties. You know, when I voted purely strategically. You think I like Aaron O'Toole when I voted Conservative? No, but I'm historically a Conservative voter. And I knew that voting PPC would split the vote, but then you know what's going to happen? Canada's going to be back in that fucking cycle of get rid of the Liberal, put in the Conservative, get rid of the Conservative, put in the Liberal, and on the freaking rat race we go. You know, even this Pierre Poilievre guy that's coming out, and I personally like him, but he's a different kind of lizard. He's the lizard that you want on your team. He's kind of like the Ron DeSantis of Canada, where you're like, you know he's a piece of shit. Like, you know he's a snake. Yeah. But like, that's the kind of snake that I want in my grass. You know what I'm saying?
Yes.
Well, I wouldn't go that far.
Maybe not that far, but you know what I'm saying?
You got right wing, you got left wing. They're both the same bird. So there's connections. Every single party in our parliament is connected.
Yep.
Period. So these guys have their tentacles into everything. So I'm going to make a few points about this whole conversation that's been going on. There's a woman named Christine Messe. She has gotten Freedom of Information Act on the purification of COVID, SARS-2. Mm-hmm. So what that is basically she's written a bunch of institutions that have access to global labs, so all over the planet, for the purification of the virus. So you have to take it from a sick person, purify it in order to isolate it, then give it to a person so that they wind up with the same symptoms to prove that you have the virus. It's never been purified. There is no record anywhere on the planet of the purification of SARS-2. So they can't even prove it exists. So if they can't prove it exists, they can't calibrate a test. If they can't calibrate a test, they can't have a vaccine for it. So I'm not saying anything. I'm just saying there's over 170 Freedom of Information Acts of institutions that have access to global database to labs, and it's never been purified anywhere on the planet. Now, the Emergency Act that Trudeau is trying to put in is completely illegal. It should not be there. Hitler did a very similar move in what he did in freezing bank accounts and taking money and doing all kinds of things. So, I mean, just look that up and you can kind of see what the whole pattern is. The UN planes, they've been spotted in Newfoundland prior in the fall. They took over an airport, fenced it off, did all kinds of stuff. So apparently they're on the ground in Ottawa. We see them in the green suits with the helmets.
Yeah, they're badgeless, yeah.
Yeah, they don't speak English or anything else, and this is to incite the martial law. They introduced documents, the UNDRIP, for the United Nations. It was for the indigenous people to kind of reclaim their land. That was an open doorway for them to come in. Trudeau invited them in order to push this martial law. So don't kid yourself. They're here already. They have been here for a long time. A note to self, the UN does not have an army. They utilize other people's armies.
Yep.
So there can be any nation whatsoever that can spare the army. So yeah, like, I mean, a lot of what's going on is all smoke and mirrors, and it's to keep us afraid. And knowing all this knowledge, we have to stop with the fear, and everyone needs to stand up. So with this trucker convoy, I believe that it blew up to unbelievable proportions. A lot of people are wondering, how can we help the truckers? You know, they're taking down their funding, they're taking down all this stuff. They're trying to prevent it every way they can. And what I'm going to say is, every business owner, open your doors, open your business, get back to it. Everybody else that's out there, support every business you see standing up. Give them your money, give them your support. Get everybody open again. We need to get together, unify, stand together, have no fear, you know, and really push this back. If we say that there's no mandates, they're going to drop, literally, because who's going to enforce it on everyone? They don't have the power.
It's absolutely true. And I just want to say, you know, sort of in closing, a couple of things. We got to drop the fear. We have to embrace our community, embrace one another, whether they're vaxxed or whether they're not vaxxed, whether they wear a mask, whether they don't. It's up to us to show them grace, compassion, patience, and love. It doesn't matter when somebody comes and becomes privy to all this knowledge and wakes up. It doesn't matter what. We welcome them with open arms. And then one other thing to all business owners that have still stayed silent or that have been enforcing the passports, the free market will never forget. That's all I got to say about that. The free market will never forget, and fortune favors the bold. So to all those business owners that have kept their businesses open, you will continue to flourish beyond your even understanding, because I am, and I know that's only going to continue. And seriously, you know, God bless this country and even the people that we don't agree with, because it's that kind of attitude that's going to bring everybody together. No more pointing fingers, no more fucking labels, no more anti this or pro that or sheep this or sheep that. We have to be the shepherds amongst the sheep, and shepherds got to show grace, love, compassion, and strength and leadership. And that starts in our own households. That's it.
Oh, that's a perfect way to end it. That was perfect. Couldn't have said it better.
Thank you. I really appreciate that. This was a lot of fun.
Yeah, this was a great conversation. I loved it. This is awesome. Well, thanks so much, Mike, for having you on. And again, to everybody out there, Forza Barbell, that is the place you want to be if you want to get jacked and be fully accepted for who you are as the normal person you want to be. So.
Yeah, I appreciate you guys. This has been a really, really good time.
Awesome. I'm
sorry again for not coming on 2 weeks ago. Had I known it was going to be this fun, I would have made it happen, but I'm glad we were able to do this. And thank you so much again for having me on. And I'm able to share my story, my message with people. So I appreciate your platform, truly.
And thank you for being here. So I want to talk to anyone that's watching this, whether you're watching it live or watching the recording. Share this video, like it, start to follow us, subscribe. We have many different platforms you can go on, and we can put the link tree up so you can follow us wherever. Also, if you're a business owner and you're looking for a support team, come join us at We Are All Essential, weareallessential.ca. You can enlist your business or register. You don't have to go public right away. We have a bunch of knowledge that you can learn in the background. Learn it, get yourself prepared, know what you're talking about, open your doors. You need to build that confidence. We have Zoom calls that you can jump on to. We have Zoom calls.
Yep.
We have Zooms that you can jump onto. We have a Telegram chat. Many people, even like myself, are willing to mentor you or support you in any way we can. It is a mentor kind of network where we work with each other, for each other, and share in real time things that are working, not working, that kind of thing. Also, if you want to really get involved as well and you don't have a business, you can join as a volunteer, because the more shoulders, the better. So
yes, and just as a side note as well too, we also have the SOS chat. So if anybody's running into some issues and they need to get it dealt with as soon as possible, we always have people ready to jump on to help you immediately. So or as soon as possible. I've actually personally called people just to help them out. So yes, so lots of support.
And
lots
sorry
of
guys, I don't mean to like interrupt here, but I can't actually hear you guys anymore. A client just called me. He's at the door right now. I wish he didn't call me. But
no.
I can't hear anything that you guys are saying. This was awesome. Much love to you guys. God bless. I'll go back and listen to this again. You probably said something quite lovely that I just missed. So sorry about that right at the end there, but I appreciate you guys. Appreciate you guys so much. Okay.
No problem. Thank you so much.
Care.
Have a good night.
See ya.
Have a great night, Mike. And on that note, I guess we'll say goodnight to everybody.
Yes. Bye.
We're just about to, so might as well do it now. Have a great night, everybody. We'll see you next week.